What up, nerds? My name is Leslie Smith. Welcome to the Nerdy Narrative, a little channel I created in order to have a place to come and yap about all of the books that I read. Books, short stories, novellas. It doesn't matter what form of literature it is. I've even started reading essays lately, and I don't care about the genre. It's all about the story with me. Besides my love for reading, I also love to talk. So this channel allows me to combine my two favorite things, reading and then talking about it. And so that brings me to what are we doing here today? On Fridays, I like to do my weekly reading wrap up, and that is everything I read, what I'm still reading, and what I plan to read next. Let's start with manga. So I did finally get the third volume of Uzumaki from my library. So I was able to finish this series and I really enjoyed it. It's so weird. It's so weird. You don't get a lot of answers at all. So if you're somebody, you have to have resolution. If you're an impatient reader and you need answers quickly, this series, this manga, this artist, this writer is not for you. At least with what I've read by him so far. My friend Joanna just put it perfectly in her recent video when she was talking about her reading of Uzumaki, how she really enjoyed the psychological aspect of it. And I had not put a name to it, but that fits perfectly. He gives me enough information to let my overactive imagination run wild with possibilities. And this one stays with you after you read it, which I think is probably the whole point of a horror. The tagline for Uzumaki is spiral into horror. So it has to do with spirals. And guys, you don't realize you see spirals everywhere until you read a horror manga about it. And you have that visual to go with the written story. And there was even a part where I was like wanting to put my hair up because I have spiral curls. And I was just like, so I really enjoyed it. I also read by Junji Ito his newest piece, Censor. I was waiting on it because my friend Una from the Codex Cantina, he and I were planning to buddy read it, and we were waiting for his library to get their copy. And he was finally able to get his hands on it. We read it again. There were more questions than answers, but I do feel this one had an ending. Uzumaki did not feel like a finite ending. It felt like a to be continued, but Censor definitely gave me an ending, and I was actually quite pleased with the ending. It's one that I have to reread because I didn't see it going where it went. I just really enjoyed it. I really love his artistry. It's so minute and detailed, and it's so good. It's so good. But my one critique for Junji Ito, all of his girls look alike. His main characters all look alike to me. I don't know if that's on purpose or accident or what have you, but there it is. Okay, next up. So I am taking part in a read-along that Jake from The Bookish Drummer is doing, where we will be reading through all of Stephen King's short stories. We're currently working on Night Shift, and the one that we read for this week is Graveyard Shift. And again, kind of following along behind Uzumaki, Graveyard Shift did not have a finite ending. It also had a feel of to be continued. And again, it gave me enough information for my overactive imagination to take over and take it further. My favorite part about Graveyard Shift was the atmosphere. Stephen King adequately described where we were and the surroundings so well that I could imagine being in a place like that and experiencing what the characters were going through, and their fear felt like my fear. How they felt was exactly how I think I would have felt and thought. Now, there were some things that happened that I don't believe myself capable of, but then again, you never know until you find yourself in that situation. Am I right? Yeah. I also finished Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. I do not like the main character, Anna Karenina. Although there were several what I felt like were main characters, I really enjoyed Kitty and Levin. I loved reading about them, everything about them, even about Levin's farm and farming techniques. I even enjoyed that. Everything about those two I loved. Anna and the guys surrounding her, not so much. They got on my nerves. My eyes felt like they were just going to stick in the back of my head with all of the eye rolling I was doing. But guys, We all love a little bit of drama, and those three were surrounded in drama, and I kind of liked it. I loved to hate on them. So this is one I'm so glad that I read. Will I ever read it again? Probably not. Probably not. So let's talk about Miss Clarice Lispector and the final piece of work that she wrote before her death, The Hour of the Star. Clarice Lispector does not allow you to fly through her work. She makes you stop and think and reread and flip pages back and forth. And there were times that I just had to stop and let it soak in what I read. And for different reasons. There's a lot of sadness and tragedy in this story. There's also a lot of humor. And there were times that the narrator, the things they said, I just really wanted to come through this book and pop them. It was so rude. But then the narrator would claim to love the character they were writing about. And I loved it. Absolutely loved it. I mean, it's tabbed up. I mean, gosh, guys, look at this. Anna Karenina, she has 3 tabs. And that's like an 800-page book. But Clarice Lispector's Hour of the Star, like a novella, 78 pages. And look at all the tabs. The way that she writes, the beauty that is in her writing is astounding. I feel that Clarice knew that she was dying. I feel that she had this character, this story that demanded to be written before she died. I feel Clarice was talking about herself. It's amazing. And again, like guys, you've heard me say so many times, Clarice Lispector just can write about the most mundane things and make them huge. And that's exactly what she did. She is writing about a young lady who is very poor. She has a mediocre job, basically has no life, lives in the bad part of town with 3 or 4 other girls that I believe are ladies of the night. She doesn't realize that she has this tragic life. She feels that because she is alive, she has done something. She has won. This one is going to be reread so many times. I think, oh no, I have one more. I forgot. I brought my Kindle up here and put it in front of my face so I wouldn't forget about it. I did finish The Liar's Knot by M.A. Carrick, which is book 2 in the Rook and Rose. I finished the arc. I will probably reread the physical copy when it arrives in December. I loved it. I was so scared because I believe M.A. Carrick as an author duo, I believe that The Mask of Mirrors was their first joint adventure. Now they've been friends for like 10 years or so. They've been pals for a while. So it's not like they didn't know each other, weren't comfortable with each other. But when they write such a powerhouse as a first novel, you're always scared about that sophomore novel, about follow-up. Are they going to be able to keep the magic from the first book? Are they going to be able to keep it going without repeating the same old from the first book? Are they going to be able to keep it new and fresh? And guys, when I first started it, I thought, I miss meeting characters. That was so much fun in the first book, meeting all the characters, learning about them, learning about the society and the political intrigue between all of the noble houses, and also between the street gangs of the lower banks, the slums. And I thought, I'm going to miss this. And there were also some things that happened in the first book that I still felt the loss of when I started the second one. I thought, uh-oh, this one's not going to be as good. Boy, was I wrong. Hugely wrong. It was so good. There were so many things that happened and just built upon. It did not repeat any of the antics from the first book. It built upon and brought new things to light and just, I need the third book. It was so amazing. I cannot wait for the third book. Absolutely needed it yesterday. So next, I have a DNF. And Angela from Literature Science Alliance, I need you to go ahead and put your earmuffs on because what I'm saying is probably gonna hurt. And when I take my earmuffs down, Angela, that means you can go back to listening. So a few months ago, Angela was talking about a book that she read called Interior Chinatown. She read the audiobook, loved it so much she bought the physical book, and when she gushes about a book, I know that's one I need to get on my radar. Well, I went to my library and there was a long hold. Like, it just came available this week. I started listening to it, and it's one that I believe needs to be read physically, at least by me. It sounded like it was written sort of like a play format. I was lost as a goose. I did not like it. I DNF'd it. But I'm going to try and get my hands on a physical copy and give it a fair shot there. Okay, Angela, you can take your earmuffs down. As far as what I am still reading, so let's see. I am still working on Flesh Rehearsal by Brian Bowyer. I am on page 146, and that is from me starting it yesterday. Okay, it's about a serial killer, which is really all I needed to know to want to read it, but this one has been such a ride. It's very easy to read. It just flows. The chapters do shift between different characters, although I do believe I've reached a part where I think all of my characters that have been introduced to me are going to end up integrating together, and it might just turn into one story at that point. I'm not sure. But my favorite thing about this book so far has been Brian Bowyer's prose. The prose is very simple, easy to read. It's very conversational. In fact, I've seen a few interviews with Brian. I love how he talks. He just has this accent. I don't know how to describe it, but he has a very distinctive voice. He has a very distinctive accent. And so when I read this, because I've heard him so much, when I read it internally, I'm hearing Brian read it to me in his voice, which makes sense. But the simple prose is a tricky thing to say, because while it is very easy to read and follow, there is some insanely intelligent conversations with our characters. And I'm just like, Brian? Wow. Flesh Rehearsal starts off with Gretchen's story, and events take place. Gretchen has hit the road, and she ends up getting picked up by another couple of teenagers who are on a road trip back to LA. Gretchen is a singer and a songwriter. The other two, Amelia and Jacob, their dad was part of a very famous rock band who he did later commit suicide, so he's dead and gone. But his two kids, Amelia and Jacob, they play a variety of different instruments. Their mother is also a famous musician and teaches, so the teenagers have a lot in common. They mesh well. They just kind of immediately take inspiration from what's happened to Gretchen to bring them together. They're writing songs, they're playing music together, they form a band. And speaking of their mother, we also get some of her story. She happens to be dating a man named Dominic, who owns a very popular bar called the Underground. And Dominic has a son named Ludlow. Ludlow is schizophrenic. And the one thing I love about Ludlow is clearly is not taking his medication. And every time something happens, he thinks to himself, I really need to take my medication. Like, he recognizes that something has happened and that he really needs to take his medication. Somebody needs to be standing over this boy, making him take his medication. And there's also a serial killer involved, and they call him the lobotomizer. He is going around lobotomizing really beautiful women in the LA area. And we hear about him through the conversations of the different characters as they meet people, and they're like, hey, have you heard they found his latest victim? But I'm flying through this one. I expect to be done with it very soon. Love it. This is my first piece by Brian Bowyer. It will not be my last. In fact, I already have a couple others of his lined up to read in the coming months. Can't wait. I think my only other current read is also on my Kindle, and that is The Secret Life of Bees by Sue Monk Kidd. The Secret Life of Bees was picked for me by my patron, Kate, from the Literary Apothecary. And I am so glad that she did, because guys, I didn't even get off the first page and I knew, okay, I've got to buy this book, put it in my collection. It's going to be reread. Before I finished chapter 1, I was on Goodreads adding Sue Monk Kidd's, all of her books that I could find, to my TBR. She writes beautifully. She reminds me of Zora Neale Hurston, but with a little bit more polish. And that is only because of the different time periods these two authors wrote in. What I have learned so far, we have a 14-year-old named Lily. Lily lost her mother when she was 4 years old, and her father is horrible. horrible, abusive, immediate dislike, cannot stand. The guy is just despicable. And the thought process that Lily has about him and her dead mother, just how she thinks, there's no way a child, a person could have two parents that didn't love them. Like, it's heartbreaking. It's beautiful. It's just wonderful. It's just wonderful. Everybody should read it. Okay, let's talk about what I am going to read next. Well, I'm very heartbroken because I thought I was going to be reading The Fall of Babel right now because it came out. There's no indie bookstore near me that does not charge twice the price of everybody else. So the one I use is several hours away. And she emailed me yesterday morning. She's like, hey, I wanted to let you know I got The Fall of Babel and it's on its way to you. And I'm like, oh no. Oh no, no, no. So she didn't actually ship it until it was out, and it's gonna go through media mail, and I don't know when it's gonna get here. I was devastated. Devastated. But I'd already blown my book budget for the month, so I couldn't buy it on Kindle. So I was like, all right, well, I'm just gonna keep moving forward until it gets here. So I expect to finish Rehearsal really quickly, and as soon as I finish that one, my next horror read is going to be Ungodly by Braden Riddick. This one I'm just so excited for. A lot of my friends have read it and loved it. This one's just so up my alley. Wicked phenomena strike the isolated campus of Palisade Mountain College. A homeless man sees his dead son in an abandoned dormitory, pursues the boy inside, and meets his demise. In the dark of night, a student witnesses a man plummet from a high-rise, a surefire suicide. But the detectives find no body. A campus police officer on patrol suddenly develops a taste for rape and a homicidal hunger. The townspeople had always sensed an intangible wrongness on the mountain, even before an evil enigma was afoot. Cannot wait, cannot wait. And then I'm going to go ahead and get into A Little Hatred by Joe Abercrombie. The Age of Madness is the last trilogy of the First Law world, and I am so excited. I've heard this trilogy is even better than the First Law trilogy. I don't know how that could happen, but I'm excited to find out for myself. Alright guys, that is going to wrap up everything I read, what I'm still reading, and what I plan to read next. How was your week of reading? Did you read anything good? Is there anything that just knocked your socks off that you have to shout it out to all of the other bookworms in the world? Let me know in those comments down below. Guys, I hope you had a great week. I hope your Friday goes by really fast and brings you a wonderful weekend filled with a little bit of reading and a lot of fun. Take care, and I will see you in the next one.